This video is about me. This video is about you. And this video is about everyone and everything to ever exist or live. I will be talking about my philosophical journey, which is hopefully not complete yet. How my ideas shaped, how they evolved, how they were challenged, how they changed something, and how they are right now throughout this process of evolution. And it all started with this paper. And this paper contains the original piece of literature that got me into philosophy, I would say. And how that started is that I was asleep with my door locked, I remember. And when I woke up, I had written a philosophical idea on my whiteboard explaining life, God, existence, and death. And I had also written a note to myself talking about how I would find this knowledge when I would wake up. And I was just, I don't know what that was. Okay, and that was a very scary experience for me. But that's not what we are focusing on right now. What we are focusing on right now is the philosophy. And of course, this is in Sanskrit. And I believe there was a female voice that gave me this knowledge. So I've attributed it to an unnamed goddess. And yeah, I'll be translating it on the go because I don't have the English translation with me because I never translated it. But that should be easy because I wrote it. What is life? Life is an offering of God. Life is a gift from God, and in that gift, God has given us a part of themselves. So in what I talk about is Brahm, and Brahm is basically this dimensionless, infinite, immaterial God or ocean of consciousness, the epitome of love, all of them. And the idea that I believe in currently is that we are inside God, we are made of God, we are made by God, and we are made for God. I'll get to that later. Anyways, continuing. Life is a gift of Brahm, and in this gift, Brahm has given us a part of themselves. That part is called a soul, a consciousness, Atma. And when this Atma combines with a body and the ability to think, it's called life. Now, what is death? When the food that has been offered to God, like basically prasad, when this prasad gets finished, then the utensils are cleaned and they are kept with the other utensils. Over here, utensils represent the Atma or the soul, and the food represents life. So this talks about how when the when the soul is free from life, it attains mukti or liberation or freedom, and it escapes this mayajal or this illusionary material world. and that is death, the end of the offering, and the freedom from Maya. And after this process, the soul merges with the other souls into Brahm or God. What is the goal of life? The goal of life is happiness. The soul that leaves Maya behind while they are alive and obtains pure happiness, beatitude, that is Mahatma or Mahatma or Great Soul. Now, one must remember that these are very unrefined notes and these are just the original thoughts. Now, obviously, the next question is, what is happiness? Upon the experience of love, the feeling that the heart feels is called happiness. Beatitude, again, not happiness. Happiness is the discipline towards love. Does this mean that the purpose of life is to love and walk on the path of dharma or righteousness? And the answer to that is the life of a great soul achieves success only in these two, without getting distracted by any other thought. One should do their own dharma. Now, dharma, I would say, dharma is duty in a sense. Rightful, moral duty. How should one love? When one loves themselves and follows the path of dharma, then they identify Brahm within themselves. And once they realize that Brahm is within every particle and every piece of consciousness and every quanta of energy, then they start loving. What is righteousness? What is dharma? Dharma is the ability to do tyag or to leave things behind, to sacrifice. The ability to sacrifice for your duties is dharma. And this sacrifice is possible only when one has discipline or love in their hearts. What is discipline? The ability to go against your feelings or your situations in order to perform dharma and kartavya, duties. They mean the same in English because there's no word for dharma in English. But dharma is more than duties in some sense. Kartavya is duty. Kartavya is a very big subset of dharma, but it's not the only thing, I would say. Then yeah, that's what Anushasana or discipline is. Now these were the initial thoughts only. After these I got into Advaita Vedanta and Islamic Sufism, and of course they're the same thing from a very spiritual point of view. They're both non-dualistic, non-ritualistic ideas. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. Again, you're here to talk about my philosophies, not the ones that already exist. You can find them online as well. You can find them anywhere else. Okay. So, from here, I went to these two philosophies, and for these two, I would like to define some terms beforehand. This one is what I call Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. That's a very famous Sanskrit quote, I guess. That means the earth is one family. So let's define some things before again. Now, this is very much similar to that one. So I'll just be reading it out because it's in English. Love is a reflection of self in them, the ones you love, and it is devoting all your thoughts and actions to them. Life is a gift of Brahm. It is the ability to perform actions. As a gift, Brahm gives us a part of themselves, our soul, Atma, and sends it to the materialistic world, Samsar. Death is when the effect of desires and attachments is cleaned from Atma by separation, and it goes back to Brahm. The purpose of life is to love. Love and peace. Peace comes from righteousness or dharma, and love comes from love, we have already defined. So, love and peace give rise to happiness, or beatitude to be more precise. Love yourself and see yourself as eternal and a pure part of Brahm. See Brahm in every soul. Love everyone equally, inconsiderate of their characteristics. Devote or arpan all your actions to Brahm in the form of dharma selflessly. All your thoughts should be your puja to Brahm. Have no attachment. This is called vairagya, which is the supreme form of detachment. Have no attachment and devote yourself to Brahm and accept only its refuge. Time is an opportunity to perform karma, actions. Time is an opportunity to perform karma. Use it to follow dharma. Do not be lured by materialistic maya and focus on Brahm. Have self control over the senses and do not consider gratification and pleasure while choosing or performing karma. Never follow gratification. Have a relation only with Brahm and no other attachments. All of this happens itself. Just follow Dharma and love Brahm. Now, one of the problems with this entire idea is that it does not explain why Brahm created the world, or why existence was caused, why it was required, or why souls or I, the consciousness, was required. One of the ideas that I thought about to resolve this is that only the souls who got detached and who experience self love go back to Brahm, right? So, my thought was that this is a sort of cleansing for Brahm, but that doesn't make sense, I think, because how can the epitome of love and the ocean of consciousness need cleaning? So, this has been derived independently, as I mentioned before, but it matches Advaita Vedanta a lot, and I just wanted to mention that. Okay, moving on, we have this is what I call Brahmasmi. This also has multiple flaws, but I'll talk about it. Brahmasmi means you are Brahm, Aham means me, and Asmi means is. Like I am, and Aham Brahmasmi means I am Brahm. If you, Brahm, are looking for happiness outside self, outside yourself, and do not acknowledge that you are the non-dual, Advait means non-dual, that you are the non-dual singular truth, you create a materialistic world that you perceive to be external and real. This perceived reality is illusionary. I am happiness. What I want is within me. All that exists is within me. All else is fake. Nothing but Brahm exists. Brahm is me in this context. I am infinite life. There is no death. I never die. I perceive external objects, deaths, and lives, owing to my ignorance and lack of knowledge. I am formless, timeless, infinite, eternal, and singular. Time, matter, and space are only my imaginations. Once I realize this, I understand that nothing is real except for me, so I lose all attachments. I have made the universe out of ignorance, sustain it due to passion, and shall end it when I am not attached to it. Knowledge is gained when knowledge is gained and truth is realized. There is no external happiness. I am pure, transcendental happiness. But one problem that I have with this is that it does not explain morality. Now, morality for me is a very conflicting idea, because I think morality on one hand could be just invented by kings to control their um, people, civilians, in the name of civic sense and whatnot. But I think it makes sense to be moral, you know what I mean? More on that later. Okay, now we'll be going a step back, and this is kind of like a deviation from the topic, but I talk about the two sources of knowledge. I think this will be referred to later on. Later on. So there are two sources of knowledge. One is logic or intuition, and one is senses. About senses. Senses are not direct sources, rather they convey knowledge or they transfer knowledge. They must be coupled with attention to cause knowledge. However, senses can be misleading. Phantom limbs, rainbows, etc. prove this. All senses can be illusioned. Hence, sensory information does not grant us full certainty. In my opinion, such information is not knowledge. The second one is logic or intuition. While logic and intuition can potentially lead to knowledge, as there is no possible way to attain a state of uncertainty, there lies a foundational flaw. Logic and intuition must be validated by observation or the senses. Observation is based on experiences which are based on senses. However, not all intuition must be validated by observations, such as mathematics and abstract philosophy, such as this. Hence, it can be concluded that logic and intuition can lead to knowledge and certainty unless they require external validation or have incorrect premises and assumptions. And of course, it has been assumed that the information is valid, logically obtained, and the logical force applied is correct. That is it for this. Now, moving on. Just a second. Okay, now again, I talk about love and devotion a little over here. Love is the highest form of devotion, and devotion is the highest form of love. Now, of course, devotion means both worship and reverence in this context. Every moment of my ability to perform karma, life. So I have defined life as a summation of all the moments of my ability to perform karma. This gets proved wrong later, because people who have coma have life, but they don't have the ability to perform karma, for example. And every moment of my ability to perform karma, I donate to God. Okay, one more thing. Truth, awareness, bliss, and love are not characteristics of the soul, rather its form. We just have to realize this. Swarupam, form. Okay, now moving on. Wait just a second. I would like to mention that this was dated 12th April 2025. So this is very old, because I'm recording this on 29th of January 2026. Just one second. Yes, okay. Now, this specific idea is not my own, and I've gotten this from one of the Upanishads. I don't know which one. I don't remember which one. Everything that exists. I cannot say this. Oh my god. Just a second. Yeah, my table lamp keeps doing this. Why is it not turning on? Okay, I'm going to switch on the other lights now. Right. Now, everything that exists has two types of mediums of creation. One is the efficient medium, which is the creator, which creates, and one is the material medium, which transforms or becomes. For an example, let's take a pot. A potter the person who makes the pot, is an efficient medium, and the clay is the material medium. But for the universe, there should be nothing before God, right? Before the universe was created, the material universe. So God would be both the mediums. God would be both the efficient medium and the material medium. But how is that possible? So let's give another example where this does happen. Dreams. Dreams are an example of where both the mediums coincide. The dreamer is both the material and the efficient medium. This applies to imagination as well. Now there are four categories of all existence. One is anitya, impermanent, which have a beginning and an end. For example, atoms or us, our bodies. Me. Anitya. The second one is anant, never ending. They have a beginning but have no end. For example, ideologies, which are carried on until the end. The third one is anadi, which is interminable, or yeah, um, such as time or the cycle of reincarnation or space. They have an end, but they don't have a beginning. The cycle of reincarnation has an end when all the souls are pure enough and they have experienced self-love. The fourth one is nitya, perpetual, such as God. They have no beginning and they have no end. Souls, for example, as well. Anitya, anant, anadi, nitya. Okay, now let's talk about beatitude or nirvana or moksha. A person is righteous when their actions align with their thoughts are consistent to their intuition matches their values, and their values are generated by their conscience. And here's an open-ended question. Is love simply seeing a reflection of yourself in some entity, or is it devoting all your thoughts, actions, time, and energy to them? Okay, moving on. Beatitude, which I have defined as nirvana or anand, consists peace and happiness. So beatitude has two parts, peace and happiness. Peace is a byproduct of righteousness, right? Like when you're righteous, you're peaceful. I'll elaborate more on this in the future part of this video. And happiness is obtained from love or devotion, because they are the same. So dharma plus prem is love, or bhakti. Dharma plus prem leads to nirvana or moksha. Now, remember how we defined time to be a speck of the ability to do action, because life was the ability to. So basically, if you have the ability to do action right now, I have disproved this later. If you have the ability to do action, you have life. And time is measured as the smallest quanta of life. But over here the definition changes. Time is a warning and a reminder of death, and an opportunity for one to perform righteous actions, love, devote, gain knowledge, and hence live life fully. And one more thing I would like to mention over here. Love without gratitude is not love, it is possession. Okay. Now here are some unresolved questions as of 15th of May 2025. Is action the path to liberation? Is action the path to happiness? Is action how love and devotion is expressed? Or is action done by the body in the materialistic world? Does action hold enough significance to be able to express one's love and worship? Do rituals really portray devotion? Does help and kindness portray care or love? Can actions possibly make someone happy? Are actions related to duties? Are actions related to righteousness? Are actions related to the illusion of duality? Are actions related to detachment and the purity of the soul? Now, one of the tentative interpretations was life is the ability to walk. The illusionary materialistic world is the path through, and the sorry, I'll repeat that. Life is the ability to walk. The illusionary materialistic world is the path through and beyond which one has to traverse. Knowledge shows multiple routes and options. Action, dharmic action, is a step forward, and adharmic actions, which is unrighteous, is a step backwards. Okay, now here's my philosophy of love. Ishq slash ibadat, which is Urdu words for love slash worship or prem slash bhakti. Ishq slash ibadat is the purest form of detachment. As an individual lets go of all attachments and devotes energy, time, thoughts, and actions to one specific entity. Vairagya, the supreme form of detachment. Vairagya is ishq or ibadat to God. Okay, now this is my interpretation of love that I currently follow to an extent. All love starts with self-love, as love in itself is seeing a reflection and hearing an echo of yourself within another entity. If one does not love themselves, they cannot love their reflection or echo that they see within others. Henceforth, they cannot love them like the other person. So, not the person, it doesn't have to be a person, entity. So, if you want to learn how to love, you need to love yourself first. And I believe that makes sense, because how can you give what you don't have? Right. Now, love, when followed with righteousness or dharma, always leads to nirvana. As I mentioned before, beatitude is eternal happiness plus eternal peace. However, it is vairagya, which is love for God specifically, that must be followed along with righteousness to achieve moksha. Moksha consists of nirvana plus eternal dwelling in Brahma or God. It is beatitude combined with eternal freedom from the material world. Okay. Here are some deviations from the general idea of philosophies again. Discipline is when one performs actions without giving regards to the instant wants of a distracting action or inaction. It is choosing a promise over a choice, a commitment over pleasure, a priority over convenience. It is about winning the war by It is about winning the war by winning the battles. It is consistently doing actions regardless of whether one loves. Sorry. It is consistently doing actions regardless of whether one loves them or hates them to achieve what they desire. Hate being hate or dislike, both. Obsession is a state of mind wherein one's entire focus is narrow and targeted towards a specific aim. It leads to enjoying even the activity one used to hate or dislike because they either love the journey or the aim. Okay, moving on. Now I was thinking about how I define everything, right? Like I work on so many definitions and all of that. But what is the meaning of meaning? So, meaning is socially or individually accepted or contextually appropriate definition, implication, or detail of an expression independent of the medium used, which may not hold regard to the detail of conveyance depending on receiver's perception and emotional state. 10th March 2025. Now, I think there are. So we talked about two modes of learning earlier, right? The senses and the intuition. But here are two sources of knowledge. One is teachers, which includes books or other mediums like creators, YouTube videos, whatnot. And one is doubt, which starts with a question and proceeds with discovery and culminates into an answer. And doubt obviously requires curiosity and the eagerness to learn more. A good teacher would eradicate the student's need for teachers and make the student passionate, eager, and aware enough to ask questions and educate themselves on how to find answers. So, one of my friends, Vamsi, talked about how intuition is a reflex of the brain. Because I couldn't define intuition, we were working on that. But that is ironic because a reflex is, in biological terms, when an action is committed without going to the brain, without taking permission from the brain. And that is ironic because intuition cannot be a reflex of the brain then. So, intuition is the reflex of the mind, as I changed it to solve the paradox, because mind is abstract and does not have these biological limitations. Now, coming to morality, I talked about how morality is perceptive from the perspective of plants. Wouldn't carnivores be the heroes and herbivores be the villains? Titanic was a profound miracle for the lobster in the chef's kitchen. I heard somewhere. Now, this is by Nietzsche. If you crush a cockroach, you're a hero. If you crush a butterfly, you're a villain. Morals have aesthetic criteria. And this one really draws the point home, I think. And now building upon it and asking the questions. If the definition of ethics themselves is perceptive, is it fair to have common laws, rules, and regulations that apply to all? Whose definition of morals should draw the line between the wrong and the right? Talking about free will. Consciousness cannot be free will as it does not reside in cognition, action, or decision. I define consciousness as the presence of any subjective experience. This does not give regards to the system's ability for wakefulness, awareness, or stimuli. God made the universe out of love, the material universe, and it was made out of themselves, by themselves, and at themselves. It was made out of self love. The purpose of the materialistic part of this existence is that they themselves can experience the beauty of what they are. That is why the souls who find Vairagya find nirvana while alive and moksha when dead. They merge back into God after that. Souls are the abstract bits of God sent into the material world for life. Morality is lost by these souls as they must get absorbed into the material illusionary world that they do not acknowledge who they are, a part of God, and they become immoral. The material world, made because of self love, allows for consciousness, presence of subjective experience to be sustained. Hence, as established in my philosophy before, love or devotion is how one can get out of the shackles of material world and go back where they came from. At some point in time, all souls would have gone through the cycle and reached God back. Then God would have experienced their beauty. We are a method for God to love themselves. We are a method for God to love themselves. We are born to love. We die and reach. We die and reach God or return to the material world to live again, depending on whether we are able to love and live morally or not, respectively. The material world and us are made by God, for God, from God, and at God. I love life. My purpose is to serve their purpose and love life. This also gives me beatitude, which consists peace and bliss, both of which are obtained through love or devotion and morality or righteousness. Now, over here, morality and righteousness mean the same thing, but as we go ahead, they will have separate meanings as well. The senses were made so individuals, souls, can experience God, but out of ignorance and illusion, may focus on the gratification of senses instead of experiencing them from an unbiased point of view. The greatest state of detachment is that wherein one experiences whatever the senses let them experience, but does not take any action to better the experiences as they are detached from their senses. I define consciousness. It changed a lot, my definition of consciousness. It was so hard to come up with a solution to the various problems that were occurring with this. I define consciousness as the ability to be able to sense. At least one method through which information about the external material world can be gained must be present in each and every conscious creature. Sensing inevitably leads to reaction, which may even be ignorance, but still that's a reaction. And to sense and to react is to experience. So, consciousness is the ability to experience. The purpose of life, henceforth, is to experience the beauty of the world. Talk about the karmic cycle. When the materialistic universe was initially formed, there would have been, I love this part. When the materialistic universe was initially formed, there would have been no way of deciding what present conditions the soul must face in its first birth. Because I believe in reincarnation and I believe in the karmic cycle. So the idea is that your present scenarios are determined by your actions of the past. So, when the materialistic universe was initially formed, there would have been no way of deciding what present conditions a soul must face in its first birth, since no actions have been committed by them before, because they never had consciousness before or never lived before, and there's no information usable to determine their situations or external conditions. Since it is essentially impossible that all the beings are exposed to exactly the same conditions, this includes both biological predispositions and environments and situations. They must have different situations. This would ideally be unfair. However, there is only one way to make it fair. It must be considered the choices one has before making a decision, before judging whether an action is positive, neutral, or negative, and the concerned magnitude. For example, if one is given no choice but to kill a good person and a bad person, it is morally right to kill the righteous and the impactful person over a morally incorrect person. However, murder is wrong. Does this mean the action is unethical? No. It must be deemed as ethical and positive. However, if one does not have the sufficient information to evaluate and make the right decision, they should not get any karma from that, as the decision made could not have a positive impact. But they could have not changed that, as the probabilities were unforeseen by the individual. Anyhow, the thesis is that the impact of an action, along with the information and the intention that any individual had, must be evaluated to judge whether it is immoral or moral, and how much so. Since one future situations are determined by their overall sum of karmas, the summation of this weighted karma, which is weighted by the information, intention, and situation, must be considered. This way, initial conditions can be different for the initial birth of souls, and yet they can be evaluated and be given for the situations accordingly. I would like to thank Vamsi Kalipatnapu again for getting me thinking on this specific thought. I would not have been able to approach this conclusion myself. Anyhow, this is an alternated derivation of the karmic theory based on my philosophical viewpoint, of course. Righteousness gives peace. That makes sense. That makes intuitive sense, in my opinion. Righteousness gives peace. So, the lack of righteousness makes one susceptible to disturbance. Henceforth, unrighteousness causes disturbance. Both must be triggered by specific events. So, if you do right, and whatever happens, you must be peaceful because your conscience is satisfied. However, if you do wrong, and whatever happens, you would be disturbed, even if good happens. Because unsatisfied conscience focuses only on the wrong then. I've read this quote in Sufism: everything that is not Allah is lust. Wrong, henceforth, wrongdoers are attached and they are prone to disturbance because it is all lust. Now, I would like to talk about Vairagya a little bit and how there are two types of Vairagis, Sansarik and Sannyasis. And I remember writing a very beautiful comparison between Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiv for this. Vairagya can be broken into two types, Sannyas and Sansarik. Sannyas involves leaving all material pleasures behind and physically going away from the activities of the world, abandoning all of society. Sansarik Vairagya would be being present in the society but being detached from it, when all actions and decisions and thoughts are selfless. Both have the same results: true bliss of detachment, righteousness, knowledge. Because Vairagya in itself is knowledge. Vairagya is an expression of love towards God. Okay. I would need 1 second. I think you need a break too. It's been 40 minutes since we've been talking about philosophy. I need to put my laptop on charge. Just 1 second. Okay, and we are back. Okay, now here is something on God and morality and free will. God cannot be all knowing, as them having a full viewpoint of the future eradicates the idea of free will. So here's how I solve this philosophical problem. I argue that God knows all about the past and the present. However, they should know about the future only through probabilities. They should know what are the chances of the events occurring, but not deterministically what will occur. And this follows Hess' law of epigenetics, which states that both environment and genetic predisposition are accountable for the behavior of a human. However, it is only probabilistic whether an environment would lead to expression of a genetic material or not. Free will exists. Okay. Now this is again moving a little bit away from the God philosophies. When something goes wrong or gets destroyed, an affected individual may act in one of the following three ways. One is to replace what is broken or lost. The second is to fix what is broken or find what is lost. And the third one is to adapt it being broken or lost. Let it go. And get no alternatives, obviously. Otherwise, that's just the first one. For example, I lost my toothbrush. The first one would be I can get a new toothbrush or use my finger to clean my teeth. The second one is that I can search for my toothbrush. And the third one is that I can stop brushing entirely. I hope you know which one's the right one for this. One thing I would like to talk about over here again is that there are different levels of things I believe, and sometimes things are transcendental and sometimes they're not. So the transcendental version of belief is faith, the transcendental version of care is love, the transcendental version of expectation is hope, the transcendental version of respect is devotion, and the transcendental version of motivation is inspiration, and the transcendental version of happiness is beatitude, or peace is also beatitude. A small deviation again. I want to talk about hard work and success. Hard work does not guarantee success, it only increases the probability of success because future is not deterministic, and success cannot have any determined ingredients because luck must always be an ingredient. Hard work and resilience may increase the probability of reaching success and also the chances of it having greater intensity. However, they cannot guarantee a win. You either win or you learn. How can one lose when the goal is to experience? Just because you keep trying does not mean you win. So you can either be a grateful winner or a glorious loser. Now, what you may have noticed is that a lot of my philosophies are based on absolute truths. It's not that I don't respect other people's point of views. I do. I also don't believe that I'm always true or I'm always right. But I believe that there is only one right thing. Now, perspectivism is the idea that there is no truth, no singular truth, and reality exists only in different perceptions that are shaped by each individual thought. Now, I do not believe in this, and here is my proof by contradiction for this. So, I assume perspectivism is true. Because perspectivism is true, there is no absolute truth. But that statement in itself, the fact that there is no absolute truth, is an absolute truth. And that's paradoxical. Hence, proof the existence of perspectivism also implies that it is not true. Interpretation is, if subjective, only decreases the truth in the perceived information. Perspectivism is paradoxical. Objectivism governs reality. It is not the lack of truth that veils knowledge, rather the difficulty of its pursuit. For example, the value of pi, which is the ratio between the circumference of a circle and its diameter, is a universal constant. The purpose of an art piece is determined by the artist. The audience perceives it differently and incorrectly if they find it to be different than the creator. This was 7th of October 2025. 10th of October 2025. If you are loved because of any of your attributes, such as you are caring or you're a good listener, etc., they do not love you. Rather, they love the attribute and hence all those who have that attribute. Your attribute may be an initial point of attraction, but it cannot be the reason of love. There can be no reasons of love apart from self love. Loving is an ability, being lovable is not. No entity, except God, is to be deemed lovable since all are imperfect, and those who love specific attributes could end up finding others who have more of that attribute. God and souls are exceptions as they are lovable, since they have absolutely no attributes and are the epitome of love within themselves. The only justifiable reason of love is I see a reflection of myself in you and hence I love you, by definition. This also reinforces how it is my ability to love that causes me to love you. Love is meant to be given, not to be expected. It is absolutely not in your control whether you receive love or not. Only others choose that. Hence, there is no logic in expecting it. Love is not a trade. Do not expect love in return of your love. They may not have the ability to see a reflection of themselves within you and may not be willing to develop the same. Any such expectation would leave you to be disappointed in them, and it would be that you end up hurt as the belief that you're not deserving of love. And that is ironic because the epitome of love itself, the soul, believes that they're not worthy of it. I mean, it's the thought that believes it, not the soul, but still. Okay. Now, I okay, now I want to talk about what drives morality. I think that intent drives actions, and it is intent that causes one to be righteous or unrighteous. Intent is dependent on conscience, and conscience is dependent on values. One must have the right values to be moral, since intent is judged from them. The intent of an action must be understood in terms of the net impact of an action and all the concerned parties, on all the concerned parties. And this would be based on the knowledge that the individual had at the time of deciding whether or not to take the action. The motivation to pursue the action will also play a role. So this is my graph of intent, where we have this is negative motivation to act, this is positive motivation to act. And this is negative impact and this is positive impact. Now both of these, negative impact and positive impact, are obviously based on the knowledge that you have at the time of committing to an action or making a decision. So actions are either immoral, moral, or neutral, and if the net vector is positive, an action may be deemed moral. So the net vector needs to be positive for it to be moral, which means it needs to be on the first quadrant. So positive motivation to act and positive impact. Because negative motivation to act and negative impact just means no action, right? So that doesn't really matter, honestly. But now that I think about it, I have realized that along with intent, the execution of the action also determines its morality. For example, it could be that an individual had good intentions, which like obviously positive impact based on the available information and high motivation to act. However, the action was improperly executed and did not align with the intent. In this case, if the execution is wrong enough, the act must be deemed immoral. Now, here's a counterintuitive example on this. The limited information makes a deed's intent positive, and there is high motivation to act. However, in reality, it would have a negative impact. It, it seemed positive at the time of decision or commitment. However, there was improper execution and the output was positive. So, I remember thinking about this in the form of a terrorist, where a terrorist limited, like, someone who has been grown up in a terrorist camp, their limited information would make it seem like a positive thing, which it is not, and they have high motivation to act as well. But if they wrongly execute it and harm, let's say, other terrorists, right? So, however, there was improper execution and the output was positive. Even then, should the act be regarded as immoral, since improper execution was coupled with good intention? The intention is good because intent is measured by the available knowledge. I'm not saying they should not be legally evicted, I guess. They should suffer legally. But from a philosophical, moral point of view, considering the limited exposure to knowledge that they had, we cannot call them wrong for what they're doing if that's what they think it's correct. That's what they have been trained to know. Right. So, even then, should the act be regarded as immoral since improper execution was coupled with good intention? The lack of knowledge may be ignored unless there was a chance to learn more before deciding the action. Oh, this is going to be a very long video. Okay. Now I want to talk about my cognitive pattern. I realize that I inherently accept a theory, model, or any structure only and only if it is generalizable in all aspects. This is about my way of thinking. Just one second. I realize that I inherently accept a theory, model, or any structure only and only if it is generalizable in all aspects. I understand why some may call this logic flawed. After all, it is reductionism that allows isolation of concerned variables that leads to production of new sociological, scientific, mathematical, or even philosophical knowledge along with artistic, basically all forms of knowledge. So I'm just saying that reductionism allows for knowledge production. But it must be developed into a model only after its generalizability is verified. For example, axioms of mathematics are applicable everywhere. Likewise, all knowledge must be accepted only after undergoing the thorough and often the impractical process of confirmation. Let me exemplify. This new revelation of mine to demonstrate its impact on my thinking. Sorry, let me exemplify this new revelation of mine to demonstrate its impact on my thinking. The definition of consciousness is something that I've been working on for a while now, and following is how my structure developed. This was dated on 20th November 2025, by the way. The first one is consciousness is the ability to love. Now, here is the flaw or exception. Microorganisms would be deemed unconscious even though they are not. The second one is consciousness is the ability to choose and perform actions and make decisions, which is morality. A flaw would be artificial intelligence would be deemed conscious. The third one is consciousness is the ability to perceive and use senses to experience the material world. Again, coma patients would be deemed unconscious by this logic, and artificial intelligence would be deemed conscious. This is problematic. Consciousness is the ability, this is the fourth one. Consciousness is the ability to act probabilistically. I don't think there's a flaw in this, because even though one may argue that AI acts probabilistically, it's just a mathematical algorithm that can never be truly random per se. So I don't see any flaw in this. No flaw detected by me yet, as this structure allows free will and all creatures follow this. While nuclear radioactive matter, along with quantum systems, also behave probabilistically, that problem should hopefully be easy to fix. An example, which is a tentative ideology that fixes this error, is consciousness is the ability to make probabilistic decisions. Right now you're not just acting probabilistically, you are making decisions. So I think this solves the problem. And obviously only some microorganisms would be included, because only some of them do make probabilistic decisions. Some of them just sense food and go in that direction. That's not probabilistic. But honestly, if they're doing that, if they sense food and they just go in that direction, are they really conscious? I mean, they're just algorithms and they're just chemicals, right? So I believe this right now. Consciousness is the ability to make probabilistic decisions, and henceforth it is associated with morality. Anyways, since consciousness is the presence of a soul, this helps me understand the function of a soul, which is, by this example, the ability to have free will. This implies that to have a soul is to be able to create impact dependent on your weights of decision probabilities on the material world. Even though I don't want to deviate, I'll focus on my thinking structure, my cognitive architecture. Let me use a counterexample. Many great thinkers with whom I have personally conversed on this matter have critiqued me over my solution to the following problem. Who would you save if two people were dying and you could only save one? Their solution would be to make the decision based on personal attachment or relations or attractiveness. But my solution would be to make the decision based on the speculated potential impact on the entirety of the world. Of course, my solution happens to be the more generalizable one. Though, that is not why I chose this. I chose this because I'm not attached to any individual and love all beings equally. Henceforth, I'm concerned with the net impact on them all instead of basing it off pure bias of attachment. I'm selfless. Regardless, in fact, I hope to be selfless. I'm not right now, but I'm trying. I'm in the pursuit of it. Regardless, I do believe that my search for generalizability would have caused me to choose this as well. I also acknowledge that I follow methodological naturalism, which is the commitment to use empirical scientific methods to investigate all domains, including the mind, ethics, arts, and society. This reminds me of how I was trying to derive the equation for success. I'll get to that later. When I follow the objectivity of righteousness, and do not pay heed to emotions, attachments, or moralities. It is because of this cognitive architecture of mind, of generalizability. Now, throughout these entire philosophical ideas, sorry, it's like 1:38 a.m. right now, and this video has been 1 hour long. I'm getting, I am getting sleepy, honestly, but this needs to be done. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry. There are three frameworks of dharma. I create three frameworks of dharma which may be used to classify each action. Up until now, I have been using them interchangeably with no differentiation. The first one is righteousness. This is the objectively correct action. When faced with two choices, the righteousness, sorry, when faced with two choices, the righteous one would involve choosing the one that has a greater positive impact overall, based on the knowledge at the time of the choice. The second one is morality. This is linked to responsibilities or kartavya. For example, Vibhishan chose his morality as a being over his morality as a brother of Raman by siding with Ram. Meghnad, on the other hand, prioritized his morality as a son and as a prince over his morality as a being. Now, of course, this is based on the value systems of the individuals, and there's no objectively correct morality. You can have multiple responsibilities, and you might have to choose one. So now Vibhishan was righteous since he knew he could create a much more positive impact on Ram's side than Ravan's side on the world. But I'm not sure about Meghnad because I'm not aware of his potential on Ram's side and his knowledge of the same at the time as well. Even though I know that he knew Ram was Vishnu's avatar or incarnation at the end, but he still fought for his father and his city Lanka. So he fulfilled his morality as a prince or as a son, and that's not wrong. It's just not righteous, but it's not wrong. Ethics. Now, ethics are somewhat like righteousness, except they're measured only by objective impact, the intent, limitations of knowledge, motivation to act, and execution of the action are not considered in determining the ethicality of an action, while they do play a role in determining the righteousness of any action. So that's the difference. Okay. I want to talk about peace and emotions. So there are three premises for this argument. The first premise is that sadness and happiness are temporary. The second premise is that peace is the freedom from attachment. And the third premise is happiness and sadness sprout from attachment. Where there is no sadness, there can be no happiness, and vice versa. Peace is the freedom from attachment, and hence freedom from happiness and sadness. Where exists peace, there remains no happiness or sadness. Where does not exist peace, exists disturbance. Where exists disturbance, happiness and sadness exist. Conclusion. Both happiness and sadness are negative emotions linked to desire and attachment. While one is linked to victory in the conquest of material and emotion, the other is related to its absence. Both of them are negative conditions, as are all other emotions. Emotions obstruct objectivity, potentially creating a bias in morality such that it is unrighteous. One must master them and not let them govern thoughts and actions. Now I want to talk about the objectivity of all truths. This was dated on 30th December 2025. If two statements or arguments contradict one another, they cannot both be correct because there's no subjectivity in truth. Now both might be wrong, or one might be correct and one wrong. There's a counterexample to this. Let's assume there are two women And the question is, which one looks more beautiful? The opinions of the people may differ. Does this mean there is an objective truth? No. The objective truth may be conditional in nature. Something like people who like women with big eyes like one woman, and the people who like women with one eye like another. That's weird. With people who like women with symmetrical eyes would like the other woman. So, while truth is absolute, it can be conditional. For example, this is the famous idea of drawing a 6 on the ground. So, from one perspective, it looks like a 9, and from one perspective, it looks like a 6. And there's no way of knowing whether it's a 6 or a 9. Because if one is standing over there, it looks like a 9. Right? 9. This looks like a 6, but from here, it looks like a 9. Now, who is correct? Well, it's conditional. They are both correct. And the condition is that if you look at it from that perspective, this is what the number is. And if you look at it from that side, this is what the number is. But that is true. And that statement will always be true. So even though truth is objective, it can be conditional. It's still not subjective. And I think this is what many philosophers confuse. Okay. Now there's a problem with my philosophical model, and here is its solution as well. If the material world and the soul both consist of God, because everything is made by God, of God, and by God, everything is made by God, in God, of God, because God is both the potter and He is both the efficient medium and the material medium. So everything is made by God, of God, and because God is infinite, right? And God was before the universe, so everything has to be made in God. So everything is made by God, for God, inside God, and of God. Now, if the material world and the soul both consist of God, then why is the soul permanent and unchanging, while the material world is perishable and undergoes causality and change? This is the first solution to this problem. The material world is not a physical reality made by God. Rather, it is a condition or a state of the soul. It is an illusionary experience that keeps a soul looped in until it learns, masters, and practices the ability to love itself and God and becomes detached. Solution 2. The material world is a physical reality produced by God who sends parts of themselves here to experience the beauty. Solution 1 implies that one need not do any ethical, moral, or righteous actions since causality is simply an illusion. This justifies wrongdoings. But the primary reason for one to perform actions then is that they may gain good karma and leave this illusion, which implies that all good is selfish. And the reason must be out of love. Because I believe that all action is performed is based on any of these three things. One is desire, one is morality, and one is love. And any action that you perform is because of any of these: love, morality, desire. Sorry. The primary reason for one to perform actions then is that they may gain good karma and leave this illusion, which implies that all good is selfish. Another reason must be out of love. If they love everyone, would involve themselves in objectively righteous actions. This is, at the moment, the best solution to this philosophical issue. Solution 2 does not explain why one must be detached from the world, since, according to that model, the purpose of life is to experience the world through the senses. Solution 1's second option, which is love and righteousness, explains why causality exists in the material world and why one would and should be righteous, moral, and ethical, even though the material world is temporary, because that would be an expression of their love and also create a better experience for impacted entities. I hope that makes sense. Moving on to love and righteousness, one final piece of my knowledge, I think. This is 19th December 2025. Unrighteousness comes out of selfishness, be it desires, fear. Oh, sorry, there's more. Unrighteousness comes out of selfishness, be it desires, fear, obstructing. Sorry, I'll reread. Unrighteousness comes out of selfishness, be it desires, fears, obstructing morality, or any other expression of unrighteousness. That seems like a problematic statement. Sorry, I'll repeat that. Please ignore the last two statements. Unrighteousness comes out of selfishness, be it desires, fear obstructing morality, or any other emotion. Henceforth, it follows that if one is selfless, they would be moral. Since love is seeing an image of oneself in others, it follows that love must be selfless, because loving someone when one sees their reflection in others is possible due to self love. Now, one must remember that self love and selfishness are very different. Right, so I'll repeat this. Since love is seeing an image of oneself in others, it follows that love must be selfless, because loving someone when you see their reflection in others is possible due to self love only. Henceforth, it can be concluded that all love has two mandatory prerequisites: self love and selflessness. This matches how the universal man in Islam has two natures. Now, there's in Islamic Sufism, there's this concept of a universal man, which is ideally the perfect man. I guess I don't know why they call it man. It could be a woman also. This matches how the universal man in Islam has two natures. One is the perfect nature, which is personality or morality, and the other one is perfect nature with a capital N. The last one was with a small n. And this capital nature talks about love leading to God. And this idea is symbolized by the seal of Solomon, which is this star. So it says the upper and the lower triangles represent respectively the divine nature and the perfect nature. So the divine nature is how love leads to God, and the perfect nature is righteousness or morality. And that is it. I will check if there is something more that I wanted to include. So I was wondering what creates fear, and I made multiple theories that I want to share. The first one is awareness of lack of knowledge creates fear. The second one is fear sprouts from the awareness of lack of control over an entity that may interact with an individual in some form. The third one, fear and ego both sprout out of materialism, since fear is felt by the uncertainty of not gaining or losing ownership of what one is attached to, and ego sprouts from having what they are attached to. Once an individual realizes that nothing belongs to them, but they are everything themselves, the idea of materialism fall apart, as does fear and ego. Okay. And this is something that someone said. Someone said, faith keeps us alive. And I said, love keeps us alive. Faith just feels like love in its absence. It just hit me hard, so why not say it on here? Do I have anything else? Yeah, no, this is all. So thank you so much if you watched it till here. I have taken up 1 hour 15 minutes of your time, and all I wanted to say is thank you so much for listening to me. And I don't know if you understood much of it and if I was clear enough, if I was a good explainer or an orator. But I hope you get the basic idea. Because just love everyone. Like, just love everyone. And love yourself. Because that's what it all begins with. And enjoy existence. Because often what happens is that existence and life gets such a heavy toll on us that we start seeking refuge in the idea of death, because suicide or death seems like a good option sometimes, and that should not be the case. Existence is beautiful, you just need to love yourself. So enjoy life, dance, um embrace art, express yourself, focus on the little things. As you are walking down the road, doesn't matter how bad your day is going, look at a flower, observe it, smile, look at the sky, color of the sky. There's just so much beauty out there, and not only in nature, it's look at someone's eyes. Anyone's, not only someone you love, there exists anyone's eyes. And breathing is so beautiful, and the entire the ability to live, this existence is just so beautiful. And obviously, as I've shown, the purpose of existence and the purpose of life are different. The purpose of life is to experience, and the purpose of existence is to love. But why not do both? Right? I mean, we are humans. Most likely there's a human watching this. And don't mind if you're not a human. We are creatures, and we have the ability to love. I hope you too. So why not do it? I mean, it's a beautiful life, and we're like, it's such a blessing to be here sometimes, right? I mean, that's what we started with. Life is a blessing, and is that not wrong? Right? So just go out there, have fun, and live in the present. The present is beautiful. Sometimes I think to myself, before doing any action, would my 8-year-old self be proud of doing this? And would my 80-year-old self regret not doing it? That's one of my factors before choosing anything. So just go out there and build a life for yourself, and I hope you build a good one. Lots of love from my side, and peace out.